Hello, guys. Good evening. How is it going? Everything okay? We are here to read two chapters about Harry tonight. Just two, because they're quite long and they're gonna last us three. And yeah, just before starting this live, I was actually translating the third from English to Italian. A huge task. I feel I'll never finish. It's just so long. It feels so long, and I'm only at chapter 6 or 7, and there are hundreds of them. Not really hundreds, but so many, and I feel dispirited. But I will make it somehow. In any case, it's not gonna affect this live because obviously it's written in English, so it's just gonna affect the Italian one. Anyway, so tonight, as I was saying, we are gonna read two chapters, and right now in this chapter we are gonna introduce Luna Lovegood, which is a character I love very much. One of my favorite of the Harry Potter saga, I guess. So in this book, she's gonna appear actually twice. Not now, just later on, and right before the end. But tonight we are just gonna read something about her, just to know what happened to her when she finished Hogwarts, which kind of woman she became, how she's doing, and everything. And that really, really excites me. And then we are gonna see about this interview is about to come. So we left Harry and Ginny that decide Harry's gonna get an interview. And Harry is doing this because the pressure of media is starting to become oppressive, and he hopes, quite naively, if I can give my personal opinion, to lessen it, giving an interview. There has been a very big argument, but not really an argument, but James said something to Harry very disrespectful, and Harry didn't take it well, but he talked it over with Ginny, and yeah, they found their way to get over it. So yeah, I think we can start with our chapters, and as usual, by the end of the live, I'm gonna upload them on my website, which is www.scribblingaloud.wordpress.com. So you'll find them there. You find me on Instagram too. I'm called Scribbling Aloud, and on Facebook too, even if I never use it actually, but I'm there too. So I guess we can start. Probably I'm gonna just do some break because those chapters are very long, so I'll need to drink a bit or something. Yesterday in the Italian one, my voice was really hoarse by the end of the evening. So yeah, I'm gonna take a break or two. So I guess we can start with chapter 16, which is called My Cat is Coming. Ole. I was just counting the second. Okay, Ricky, now be quiet here. Okay. Chapter 16. Being on the front cover of Witch Weekly is like winning the Quidditch World Cup. If the previous night hadn't ended so deliciously for Harry, he would have found difficulties in relating with James the next day. As it was, however, every resentment on Harry's side had evaporated fast under the effect of having spent his energy in such a positive activity. And he felt in a very good mood at dinner time. As a matter of fact, beside the fantastic pre-sleep encounter, he had managed, surprisingly, to get an amazing one in the morning too. He had taken the chance to get a shower with Ginny with the pretext of being late. And despite being really more than half an hour late in the end, that was always a guarantee of a very smiling and full of energy day. No matter how many dark wizards or difficult teenagers try sober it down. What the day before seemed the worst of offenses now seemed positively negligible. Therefore, he was unusually chatty in the evening and brought back the conversation on the envelopes containing the business proposition. So, did we decide on anything? What do you think? He asked cheerfully once they were eating at the kitchen table. We could go for a classic one with the Daily Prophet, or should we be loyal to the dear old Quibbler? Ginny, who for the same reason as Harry was in a very good mood too, answered, Luna would be happy if we would decide for the Quibbler. Luna, after Hogwarts, had had a lot of different occupations. She had worked abroad many years in exploration parties or as a magical creatures tamer. She had a knack with animals, and Harry was the opinion she could have made a proper career out of it. But at one point, she decided to drop her nomadic life and started to collaborate with the father for the Quibbler. She never married, despite having had a vast collection of relationships with men, one more bizarre than the other. She had a daughter of 7 years old, Stella, fruit, fruit of one of those failed relationships. Jenny had confided Harry that the father wasn't aware of having a daughter. Harry had been very surprised in discovering it and thought it quite odd. However, as everything surrounding Luna was odd, the surprise had lasted only a second. The child was a mini Luna. They resembled each other very much in character and looks, both living together in a world of their own, made of impossibilities and oddities. Harry had the same feeling of bewilderment in speaking to her as when speaking to Luna. Once, when Stella was 5 years old, they had been there for a visit. As soon as he got in, with a great air of conspiracy, the child took his hand and led him to a corner. Upon a quick, furtive glance around to make sure they were safe from pry eyes, Stella whispered in his ear eagerly. Mammy told me about Voldemort, she said, without the flimsiest of a tremble. I know why he was so wicked, she added, her big blue eyes set on him, exactly in the same funny way as her mother had, almost without blinking. A sure forthcoming of some bizarre revelation. Harry didn't suffer any disappointment as she continued in the same conspiratorial tone. He didn't drink cardi infusion before to go to bed. It makes you wicked, Mammy told me. And then, saddening considerably, it's a pity you had to kill him. You could have just offered him a cup and you would have made peace. Harry, at loss for words, stammered that the next time another Voldemort would have crossed his path, he would have kept it in mind. That seemed to pacify her instantly, and she trotted away happily, looking for Lily. Luna and she were very close, living together with the father, in the same house than he, Hermione, and Ron had almost brought down so many years before. Luna and Ginny were still very good friends, and many times they had been visiting her, bringing Lily to play with Stella. No, not the Quibbler! James exclaimed, almost in alarm. He had been very unsettled by Harry's cheerful mood. He was expecting to be in a lot of trouble for his behavior of the previous night, and couldn't believe his luck in being able to have the whole thing overlooked. Therefore, he was slightly less sulking than usual. You won't be taken seriously otherwise. The Quibbler hadn't changed the character of his publication. He still had the most unusual contents. All right. What do you think, Ginny? Have you got any preferences? Well, she started cautiously in saying, Which Weekly has sent us an interesting offer. They would like an interview with both of us, and they would take pictures as well. They have very good photographers. We could get some nice pictures of us. Which weekly? Harry interjected, taken aback. With all the magazines we can choose from, you suggest that one? Because of an article published by that magazine many years before, they almost broke up. Harry couldn't forget it and always had a grudge against it despite Ginny was a subscriber and was very often seen browsing for recipes, beauty spells, and trifles of that kind. Out of curiosity, he perused it once, and despite it was full of nonsense under his point of view, it had been interesting to see everything under a woman perspective. He had been reminded of when Ginny told him that women analyze every gesture, thought, and feeling, and judging by the magazine, it seemed true. There was an article, and the long one it was, that would debate on the terminology used by men with women if they were serious in their intention. He had just read the four stray lines. The column with the witch's letters asking for advice, however, had made himself laugh silly. Jenny, attracted by his hilarity and seeing what was causing it, pried it from his hands with a crossed expression. It's for women, Albus retorted with a disgusted grimace. If it's only for the photographers, we could hire them. We don't need to go there to have them taken, Harry said, very unwilling to choose that one. It's not only for that, she said, wavering. It is. I've always wanted to appear in it, she said, almost in a whisper, blushing a little, concentrating very hard on her salad. Do you? Harry asked, very much surprised. Ginny had never showed any interest in that direction, and he had always thought her to be totally indifferent to the whole matter of popularity and appearing on magazine. Why didn't you ever tell me? You always seem so against the whole thing, she said, bashful. All this blushing and bashfulness in Ginny was so new for Harry, he didn't know how to interpret it. It seemed as though she really cared for it and was a bit ashamed in admitting it. He didn't particularly relish in the idea, but sensing all her eagerness for it, he put his grudge aside. The desire of making her happy was stronger than any hard feelings. I guess it can be done. It is indifferent to me which one we choose. Dad! Both his sons boomed out, outraged. But Harry didn't even hear them, as Ginny stood up and, still with a charming blush on her cheeks, went to kiss him. Thank you. You are sweet. I'll write to them tomorrow. James and Albus were still complaining loudly, and as soon as Harry awaked from Ginny's kiss and realized, replied stern, If your mom care for it, it will be done, and I don't want to hear any grievances from you too. We are, all of us, giving her a hard time. The minimum we can do is to comply when she asks for something. The boys crossed their arms darkly, united this time in their sulkiness. But Harry was unmovable. Ginny looked just lovely when blushing. Let's have a little break to sip some water. Okay. And we can keep going. The next day, at work, he was in a very important meeting with the minister and all the heads of departments when a knock at the door announced Elizabeth. She approached him and, lowering her tone, she told him, Harry, could you come a moment, please? Can he wait? He asked, disgruntled. The meeting was a crucial one. He didn't like to absent himself or being disturbed. I just received a note from Ginny. It's written urgent on it. He almost overthrown his chair in the haste of leaving the room, mumbled an excuse, and followed Elizabeth quite concerned. If Ginny were writing to him at work, and a letter of that kind especially, it could only mean that something important had happened, and it could be only about the baby. He was already in a fit of panic when, opening the scroll, he read, Harry, which weekly just answer? They want us to do it as soon as possible. Can you take Friday afternoon off? Please say you can and answer ASAP. Kisses, Ginny. Harry stood the moment in disbelief with the scroll in his hand. That's all? He thought, furious, looking behind the scroll in case he was missing something. But no, that was all. Elizabeth was still there in front of him with a full of concerned expression, surely with the same preoccupation he had before reading the letter. Is everything fine? She asked. Harry snorted, very annoyed. Yes, everything is fine, beside the fact that my wife turned quite silly all of a sudden, he answered, taking a quill she was offering him. He wrote OK on it, wrapped it close, and gave it back to Elizabeth, who was smiling sweetly. Well, how not to understand? I'm sorry. Well, how not to understand her? I've always dreamt to be on Witch Weekly, and surely you'll be on the front cover, she said, divining the content of the scroll. That morning, Harry had recounted her the whole thing. Is it such a big deal? Probably not for you, but for a woman, it certainly is. And seeing Harry's blank face, she added, a bit like winning the Quidditch World Cup. Harry widened his eyes in surprise. Really? But then, his mind returning on the meeting, he continued, well, it's anyway not a good enough reason to disturb me at work. Tonight, she'll get a piece of my mind. When in the afternoon he was getting back home, he was ready to give it to her. But as soon as he opened the door, she welcomed him with the same blush as the evening before, a broad smile, and a very affectionate kiss. All Harry's proposition started to waver. Oh, Harry, I'm so excited! Thank you! Yeah, okay, but you alarmed me quite a lot, he said, trying to revive the irritation of the afternoon. I thought something bad had happened with the baby, and I was in an important meeting. I know I'm sorry, but I needed a fast answer. She tailed him off with enthusiasm, the blush even more marked. I love you very much. Do you know that? As she kissed him again. Okay, for this time, and only this time, I'll overlook it. He was ready to throw himself on the sofa with a cold drink when, entering the living room, he found Hermione there, sitting comfortably with a magazine in her hands. He restrained himself just in time on the edge of blurting, What the heck are you doing here? And instead, he said, Hey, Hermione, what's up? Hi, Harry. Everything fine? And you? Fine, he said while trying to attract Ginny's gaze. Meeting it, he raised an eyebrow inquiringly. I'm getting myself something to drink. Ginny, could you come a sec? As soon as they were safe in the kitchen, Harry closed the door. What is she doing here? Didn't we agree? I know, she interrupted, but I really wanted to chat about the interview, and the only girls with which I can do it freely are either Hermione or Luna. I thought that Luna probably wouldn't have entered my sentiment. Probably not. He couldn't see Luna excited to be on the front cover of Witch Weekly, but not even Hermione for that matter. He pointed it out to her. Of course she is. It's Witch Weekly. Who wouldn't? She said, barely containing her glee. Well, apart from Luna, obviously, she added as an afterthought. Okay, right, he answered, perplexed. It didn't seem to him that Hermione could get excited for something of the kind, but, as well, until the day before, he felt the same in regard of Ginny. What would I supposed to do though? I don't want to have any share in this conversation, and it's awkward, he added. That's why you will go for a run, she said with a sudden fixed smile. You know I can't. Go in the wood where we went on Sunday. Nobody will disturb you there, and it's sunny. You'll enjoy it. Chased from my own house. But then, reflecting on it, he relished in the idea to be in the open and in a safe spot. He wondered how he didn't come to think about it before. It was a perfect occasion to relax and have a breath of fresh air. As he was getting ready, he could hear a flow of non-stop talking coming from downstairs, all seasoned with a generous dose of giggles. Harry was flabbergasted. Never and ever he would have thought to hear this kind of interaction coming from Ginny and Hermione, the less giggling woman he ever met. It had to be a very big deal, this Witch Weekly interview, at least in the female sphere. He started to doubt about his decision. It didn't seem something that could decrease the pressure of medias, quite the opposite, as a matter of fact. But it was too late to back away. Not now that Ginny was so into it. Going down the stairs, another indecision sprang up in his mind. How to say goodbye to Ginny. Usually, he would kiss her. But could he do in front of Hermione knowing what he did? Wouldn't have showed insensitivity from his part? He scowled. He hated this. Before her declaration, there wouldn't have been any problem whatsoever. He would have kissed Ginny without worrying at all, and perhaps, in his recklessness, he would have kissed her too. He wanted her friend back. There were so many things he longed to share about the ministry, the decision taken, the changes of plan and of actions, people coming and go. She would have been able to give him excellent advice. But no, he had to worry over how to say goodbye to Ginny. All this indecision turned out to be totally needless, however. Ginny did barely raise her eyes on him, all taken by the chat. They were cozily wrapped up on the sofa, picking avidly carrots and celery sticks from a bowl. Ginny didn't approve of junk food, and that and fruits were all the snack one could get in the house. They have such a good photographers. Did you see in the last edition the picture of Camilla Bryant? She looked divine, she was saying brightly to Hermione when he announced he was about to go. She interrupted her talk just to say, pick up the kids before getting back, would you? They are at the barrow. And then she resumed her talking to an Hermione as excited as herself. The evening was lovely. They were getting a very nice summer with long intervals of sun between the usual English rain. Perfect for sport in the open air and day out during weekends. Harry had missed his exercise. He was doing it at home, but what he really liked about it was to be out and free with his own thoughts. The countryside was still lush, and, despite during the day it was starting to be quite hot, in the evening was still cool and pleasant. The chances to be alone and undisturbed was priceless. He needed to store some serenity because he knew that this interview would have required a lot of forbearance from his part. He was getting ready to do something that he had always avoided at all costs, thinking to improve the uncomfortable situation he was in. But he had started to understand that his plan would have probably backfired. Ginny seemed so happy, however. He didn't feel like ruining for her. When he got to the barrow, James and Albus attacked him again with complaints about the interview. Can't you do it for the Daily Prophet instead? Albus asked, sniveling. Man is getting so silly, James retorted vexed. I agree with you both, but she is very excited about it. It's the only time my popularity is making somebody happy, he said as I put down to James. Let's bear with it. And in a couple of days, everything should be over. And that was finally the end of chapter 16. Very long. Hello, Marco. Hi. Welcome. A very long chapter. And actually, reading it now, I could have broken it when I did the forced break. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe because the first part was too short. I have no idea. But I don't feel like doing it now. I should change all the numbers of the chapter, and surely I would like skip one. We want more Stella. Ah, the Stella, she's so cute. I know. I should have put it in it more. I feel like that. But yeah, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but there is not gonna be much of Stella. I just told about her briefly there, and there is gonna be one or two line in the third book, but yeah, no more than that. I'm sorry, but there is gonna be Luna at least. But she is lovely, my Stella. I love that part. She's so cute. And I choose a very, very obvious name for her daughter, but it seemed so appropriate. So I guess we can carry on. You can see my socks if you want to. How cute. I'm really proud of my socks. It's a present of one of my colleagues, and I find it so perfect for this life. Okay, after that silliness, we can carry on. Chapter 17. Getting ready for the interview. That evening and the next day passed in a frenzy of excitement from Ginny. She couldn't concentrate on anything, and Harry had never seen her so agitated over something. It had its advantages, surely. She was very affectionate and sweet, and the pretty blush was there, ready to spring out any second. But, on the downside, she was spending a ridiculous amount of time with her head in the fire, speaking with Molly, Hermione, and even Luna at one point. That one, however, didn't last that long. It didn't go exactly as Ginny was expecting. Harry was reading the newspaper in the kitchen when Ginny, unable to contain herself, after having finished a preposterous long call with Molly, stuck his head again in the fire, calling for Luna. Harry halted his reading, curious to know how the news was going to be received. Ginny's excited voice filled the kitchen. Luna, I'll be on Witch Weekly cover next week. A long pause followed. What do you mean with what Witch Weekly? The magazine, Luna! Harry, bringing back his attention on the newspaper, sniggered, relieved to know that at least somebody who always surprised him with their absurdities, this time didn't surprise him at all. He was anyway bewildered by the volume of chat she managed to have in the space of a day and a half. What were they talking about? The interview hadn't even happened yet. He asked Ginny on Thursday night. He was sitting on the bed, watching her removing makeup. She replied, Well, all the preparation connected to it. What preparation? Harry asked, perplexed. You know, how to do my nails, which kind of face mask to use, if I should wear some kind of makeup, the same for the dress. Okay, I got it, Harry interrupted, thinking how stressful it could get being a woman. However, for mysterious reasons, Ginny seemed to enjoy it greatly. She started to rub her body with some oil, usual evening practice since the discovery of her pregnancy. What are you going to wear? Me? Harry answered absent-minded. He was thinking about many things, looking at her, smearing her beautiful skin with oil, and none of those was about what to wear the next day. Jeans and t-shirt if you leave it to me. I thought you could wear a shirt for a change. If you let me smear the oil for you, I'll wear whatever you ask me to, he said, standing up and getting the bottle from her hand. Unfortunately, she took it away from him, apostrophizing him. Harry, tonight you stay very far away from me. I want to have a fresh, rested face tomorrow, and you know I cannot sleep well. I want to get as much of it as I can. All right, he answered, disappointed, returning to lie down on the bed. So then, don't do that in front of me. Are you going to wear a shirt? She asked hopefully while disappearing in the bathroom. They had an ensuite, which was very handy. That meant that Harry couldn't see her, but they could keep on talking, and he could carry on imagining whatever his fantasies suggested him. I'll wear whatever you like. Are you going to shave? If you want to, I will. Yes, I'd like you to. Okay, I'll do it tomorrow morning, he answered, his mind still very far away from these trivialities. She appeared from the bathroom in her nightshirt, in all her lovely roundness, her hair sleek and shiny, and her smooth skin slightly glossy because of the oil. You look beautiful, he told her, incapable of keeping his eyes from her. She smiled. Thank you, but that still doesn't change the fact that you will stay on your side of the bed. Harry snorted, thinking, as Ginny, but for different reasons, then the morrow couldn't come fast enough. Let's have a small break. So we have a very excited Ginny and not a very excited Harry. Quite the opposite. Oof. Let's carry on. He did come quickly enough, however, and when he was back from work, he found Ginny welcoming him in a flutter, waving a fresh laundered white shirt under his nose. In case you heard a strange noise, that was my cat. He talked in his sleep. I know, I've got a cat that talks in his sleep. Sorry, where were we? But if you hear any strange noise, it's always my cat that is sitting right there, even if you cannot see him. Eat something, get a shower, and wear this. Quick, I don't want to be late. All right, he answered grudgingly. Where is this place anyway? Not far. We'll get the bus. The kids are at the borough. They will sleep there tonight, so we don't have to worry about being late. When they were ready to go, Harry wore a cap and sunglasses as an added measure not to be recognizable. Having, anyway, many doubts about the efficiency of this measure, especially because Ginny wasn't adopting any. However, However, perhaps because they walked, or more probably because they didn't encounter any witches or wizards on the way, they got to the address undisturbed. The building was a very posh complex in West London, 6 floors high, walls of dusty pink color, and the abundance of gold trims. At the entrance, there was a wide, well built man in a black uniform scanning severely anyone approached the stairs. Ginny took out from her purse a shiny business card and showed it to him. He perused it quickly and with a nod let them pass. From the glass door, a fancy staircase with a red carpet could be seen, but once they pushed it open, the view that presented to them was totally different. It was a proper, messy, busy, noisy office. The walls were exactly the same shade of the building outside. All the desks, very elegant, made of glass and quite modern, cluttered by piles of paper, quills, empty paper glasses, and magazines. People were running back and forth from one desk to the other, all busy and seemingly in a hurry. There were many big fireplaces scattered in the war room. Some of them were different from normal fireplaces, though. They were circular and raised a few inches from the floor. In front, there were some chairs occupied by one or two people with their heads stuck into the fire, intent in speaking with somebody on the other side. Witches were tapping rhythmically on parchments that would fly on the numerous mounds scattered around the room. On one side, there was a big window, and through it was possible to see many white owls with the gold W drawn on their chest. Just beside, there was a lift. From that one, a tall woman, extremely bony, with a lilac muggle business suit, emerged. She had a very fancy look, not too young, but not very old either, probably a few years older than them. She was overflowing style and confidence, and had a broad smile stamped on two painted pink lips. It was obvious by her demeanor that she couldn't be any other than the boss in there. She greeted Ginny as if she was a very old friend, kissing her twice on every cheek. She received this effusion very timidly. Harry was just wondering where his fiery wife had disappeared when the woman turned her attention to him. "Hello, Harry. Can I call you by your first name, can I?" She didn't even let him answer, and she was already ranting on. "I'm so honored that you chose our magazine to give an interview. We can actually say the first since you were 15. I can just say that you chose well." Harry tried again to speak, but she continued with the same speed. "We will treat you both very well. We can easily say that your wife is charming, and we cannot wait to take some wonderful picture of the Potter couple." As she uttered the last sentence, an unnatural silence fell in the room. It seemed almost as though Hermione had casted her time stopper spell. He could see every man and woman froze in their task, looking at them. He felt suddenly awkward. The woman in front of him, on the other side, looked completely at ease and didn't even seem to notice. She extended a hand to him. "I'm Margaret Skeeter." He took it, and while shaking it, a doubt appeared in his mind. "Skeeter, are you by any chance?" Not letting him finish, she made a soft, coquettish laugh. "Yes, I am. I'm the cousin." But seeing Harry's appalled expression, she added quickly, "Don't worry, Harry, I'm very different from her," she said, tossing her long ponytail with a very contemptuous expression. "She is so vulgar." Harry threw a filthy look to Ginny on his side. She could not know. She knew it and purposely kept it hidden from him. She studiously avoided his gaze, confirming his suspicion. "And anyway, writing the book about Dumbledore really marked an end to her career. A drop in style, I must say. You know, the way she wrote about you and him. Despicable," she said, studying her lilac painted nails attentively. And just as Harry was starting to think that this woman could actually reveal him to be a good kind of person after all, she continued, "She should have known how the tide was going to turn." No, they are quite the same. Blood always tells. When everything with Voldemort had been over, he had read the whole book, and getting to that chapter, he had grown so indignant and offended that he grasped the first reporter he could find and told him quite clearly that the book was a pile of rubbish and he despised it wholeheartedly. The next day, it had been retired from the market, and Skeeter had disappeared from the journalist circle. And it had been for the best, under Harry's point of view. As this was going on, the people in the room hadn't retrieved their occupation. They were still staring at them, and slowly, it seemed, they were getting closer, like if a game of grandparents' step was going on. Every time he looked at the multitude, they were immobile, but a bit closer. Still a few glances, and they would be upon them. Margaret finally acknowledged her presence. Staff, today, as I told you, we will have here Harry Potter and his wife. Harry felt a pang of annoyance. Ginny had a name, and a very beautiful one at that. His sons had names too, but all the time an introduction was going on, it was always Harry Potter and his wife, or Harry Potter and his sons, like if they didn't matter at all and they were living just to be an appendix of him. He didn't let this one go. Ginevra Weasley, he interrupted her ranting. She faltered and looked at him inquiringly. I'm sorry? Her name is Ginevra Weasley. Margaret simpered as Ginny slid one of her hands around his arm as a gentle reproach. But Harry didn't care. He wouldn't allow this woman to boss them around with her unstoppable talk. Of course, she cooed soppily, and then resumed her tirade as fast as before. Well, as I was saying, we will have the honor of guesting them for today. Whatever they will need, we will be at their disposal. Is that clear? The group nodded slowly, without taking their eyes from his person, and just occasionally shifting it to his forehead. He had never cut his hair short to avoid people staring at his car, but it had never worked. No matter how his wild hair was covering, all the glances of the magical community were always going there. He felt the impulse to flatten it on the scar. I dare say we can start. Would you like something to drink before to go? The sentence wasn't at an end. Then in a bustle of movement, at least 10 paper cups with different contents were offered to him by the same number of expectant hands. No. Thank you. He avoided whenever he could to accept any food or drink from strangers. And when he was forced to, despite the risk to be impolite, he checked with a spell if it was safe. It was even too easy for anybody to slip some potions inside. The danger was always present. One couldn't be too careful, especially in his situation. Let's go then, she said, marching in front of them to the lift with a steadfast, business-like step. They followed her, and Harry was glad when the lift door closed to be divided from the employees' angry stares, tired already by all this attention. Margaret filled them with the day's schedule while they were walking through a long corridor. Big rooms with glass doors were on both sides. Some were empty conference rooms. In some others, there were employees working frantically as dancers, and some were shooting sets. Inside those, a lot was going on. Many people were gathered in a bustle of activities. They passed in front of one where an unbelievably thin witch with very long black shiny hair and a fitting endearing red dress was smiling alluringly to many photographers. Ginny, seeing it, whispered to him excitedly, "That's Camilla Bryant!" Harry frowned. He had not the remotest idea of who she was, but decided not to ask, not particularly interested. Margaret, in the meanwhile, had informed them that they would go for the interview first, followed by the shooting afterward. They would choose one of the pictures taken to be printed on the front cover. At the mention of those two words, Ginny beamed delighted. Ginny ought to go for hair and makeup. Ginny ought to go for hair and makeup. Harry submitted passively to every decision, hoping that everything would be over soon. His mind started to wander on what they could do during the weekend. If there would be any chance to go somewhere nice, the lying in that was waiting for him the next morning, the cuddle before to sleep, the boys not at home. When Margaret's voice caught his attention. And of course, Harry, you can sit for the hairdressers as soon as our Madeline is ready. He stopped. Excuse me? We will need to fix your hair. It's a bit wild. Looking back with sufficiency. He shook his head, smirking. Nice try. You are not going to come 10 feet from me with a comb. Ginny and Margaret opened their mouths at the same time to retort. He didn't leave them the chance to do so. I say no, he uttered. And it was said with such a finality that neither Ginny nor Margaret tried to oppose any resistance, even if obviously very tempted. They reached the room with many mirrors and white, ugly, oval plastic chairs positioned in front. On both sides, there were long racks. On both sides of the space, there were long racks charged heavily with cloth of any kinds. The sober muggles on one and the colorful wizarding one on the other. A young witch with dark hair adorned by flaming purple locks was waiting for them with a glowing countenance and her wand ready in her hand. A brief introduction revealed that this was the Madeleine in charge of hair and makeup. Margaret made Ginny sat on one of the uncomfortable chairs. We will make her look stunning, Harry. You won't recognize her when we are done, she said, winking. Harry frowned. He liked his wife exactly as she was. Seeing Ginny so excited, and with a thorough confidence letting the young witch approach her, he took a resolution. It is true, he never gave any interviews and tried to keep away from the world of gossips and magazines. But he had the feeling that she understood much better the hypocrisy behind it. Perhaps because he had experienced beca- perhaps because he had experienced many times on his skin. Notwithstanding how sweet and caring this Margaret was behaving toward Ginny, Harry could see what was hiding behind, and he didn't want Ginny to suffer from it. Could I talk to you for a moment, alone? He said to Margaret, interrupting that non-stop buzzing. She was taken aback, but sing-songing an assent beckoned him to follow her. He leaned close to Ginny to whisper in her ear, I'll be back soon. Don't let these people put too much rubbish on your beautiful face. I like just as you are. She simpered pleased and gave him an affectionate peck. He followed Margaret in a small room adjacent. He was full of clutter of any kind, clothes, technical equipment disused, some old furniture. The room was dark, with only a tiny window on the far end. She turned an oil lamp. She turned an oil lamp on and leaned against the wood chair, looking at him expectant. So, we're alone. What do you want to talk about? She asked, changing completely the manner from the chatting box to the self-assured businesswoman. Harry allowed at that moment his inner dangerous self to rise on the surface, just a little bit, just enough to let this woman understand he meant business. He wanted her to see it in his eyes. He smiled, his intimidating smile, and moved 2 intimidating steps toward her. I just wanted to warn you. I know what your kind of people is capable of. He started in saying, not dropping his ominous smile. Let it be clear that you can torment me as much as you want today with your questions. I know how you are willing to forget that people like me are made of flesh and blood like everybody else, and I accept it. I knew before to get into this. But, in telling this, he got even closer to her, even more menacing. If you make my wife shed even one single tear, if you make her suffer for the sake of selling few more copies of your magazine, you'll answer to me. And I'm not as good as I look like. All right? Margaret was taken aback. The smile had dropped already long before the end of his speech. There was only disquiet remaining on her face. She blinked and nodded. After a moment, where her mouth couldn't emit any sound, she said, Of course, Harry. I had no intention whatsoever of paining her with unfeeling questions. Good. No problem then. And I don't want any funny business with strange quills either. You will report what we say. Not a word more, nor one less, he concluded, remembering Rita Skeeter's will. He wasn't anymore a young and inexperienced boy of 15, without anybody sticking up for him that could be manipulated. This time, everything was going to be on his terms. He grinned, this time friendly, letting his doppelganger sink in the deep of his being. He opened the door and walked out. After a second, he heard some scribbling coming from the room. Margaret was scratching out something on paper. Very well, he was glad to have made a point. Remembering about the aim of the interview, though, he stuck his head in the room again, addressing her last time. I expect you to ask me about Ronald Weasley. And marched off without waiting for an answer. He got back to Ginny. Madeleine was still working on her using alternatively wand and brushes in a coordinated ballet. When he appeared on the side of the young witch, however, she startled, skipping a beat, and blushed furiously in finding him so close to her. Seeing her hesitation, he told her, Don't mind me. You're doing a great job. It was true. She hadn't smudged Ginny's face with tons of makeup as he was fearing. She had a very natural one that only enhanced her delicate features. Her skin was radiant, her lips sensual and glossed, and her hair had been straightened and put into shape by Madeleine's expert hands. They looked even slicker than usual. She resumed her work, rolling Ginny's hair on a round hairbrush and pointing her wand on it that was puffing out some white steam. Wouldn't you like me fixing your hair, sir? She asked with a squeaky voice. You can call me Harry, and no, thank you. I can see you are talented, but I keep my untamable hair. Certainly, sir, Harry, she corrected herself quickly. If I'm allowed to say so, I think this suits you anyway, she added, somewhat flustered, working studiously on Ginny's hair, who looked through the mirror in his direction, grimacing teasingly. Thank you, Madeleine, he answered, prodding Ginny jokingly, unspotted by the young witch, with comb and wand in her hands, all lost in her embarrassment. And she said hesitantly. Yes, Harry encouraged her. Could I have an autograph? She let out, all in one breath. Sure, he answered, laughing, as Madeleine flew away excited to get the necessary. Despite it happened quite often to be asked for it, he wasn't accustomed yet. He just couldn't understand why they wished for it. What was the importance? It was just his signature on a piece of paper, a totally useless untidy scribble. However, because especially young witches seemed very keen on it, he never refused, despite the awkwardness felt. She got back with a quill and a card, one of those chocolate frog ones. The day after the Hogwarts battle, 20 years previously, in a mass, journalists had heaped on the spot. Harry and everybody had participated in the battle was still there. They had occupied the Hufflepuff dormitory, as it was the one, excluding Slytherin's one obviously, that had been less damaged by being in a more endorsed position than the others. The injured, who couldn't be moved, were cammed in the dining hall where Madame Pomfrey and the healers from San Mango worked tirelessly all night to help them. After having spoken to Dumbledore, he was exhausted and longing only for tranquility and repose. Exhausted in body and spirit, he had slept for 14 hours straight, a long rest without dreams. Ron and Hermione had taken turns to guard his repose to make sure nobody would disturb him. When he woke up the next day, he was starving. After a fulfilling huge breakfast served by a very proud creature, all his body immediate needs were satisfied. He hadn't time to think about what to do next. That made him feel uneasy straight away. For all his life, he had this mission to accomplish, to determine all his action and thoughts. He never really planned the after, because he had never been sure there would have been an after. Probably, he never halted to think about it, not to admit to himself that his life could have been ended in the pursuit of Voldemort. He had fulfilled his job now. He was still alive, but he didn't have a place to go, or a family who would welcome him. He only had Hermione and Ron. He didn't feel like sharing his worries, especially with Ron. He didn't want to burden anymore his family with his presence. They had a lot to bear because of him during the years, and he couldn't face them with Fred's death hanging over his head. It was his fault if he died. He hadn't surrendered to Voldemort. He was scared to be blamed and shunted out. And again, it had been Hermione who understood his internal preoccupation. He had convinced him to go to the dining hall where the Weasley family was aggregate, devastated from Fred's death. And all his fears proved to be wrong. They enclosed him in their grief, allowed him to participate like a member of their family. They didn't let him doubt about his future. They invited him straight away to their place. Ron had shared happily his family with him back then. And journalists had stormed in, giving Harry the first glimpse of what his life was going to be. They harassed him with questions to which he didn't feel like answering to. They had taken picture of a 17-year-old boy who had just lived an ordeal, dazed and confused, still with the same clothes of the battle, torn and dirty. Arthur had intervened to keep them far, but one of those pictures had been printed without his consent on a new edition of the Chocolate Frog card. It had become one of the most sought after, and it was the item he had to sign most often. He looked to his 17-year-old self, ragged, dirty, with that discouraged look, who stared at him for a moment, then scolded and turned away. Poor kid. He felt very much all the time he saw that picture, remembering with clarity all the emotions of that time. Don't worry, the worst is gone. You'll be happy now. He felt like telling him every time. But now, after Christmas, it had changed. He wasn't an assurance he wanted to convey, by warning. Brace yourself. In 19 years, you'll suffer much more than you ever suspected possible. He took the quill the young witch was offering him, and as usual, he marked his initial. Madeleine was over the moon. She thanked him and fell in a reverie, observing those two letters that made a simple card turn into something like the Holy Grail. She folded it reverentially in a silk scarf and stored it away in her purse. She resumed coyly her job on Ginny's hair, who was by now smirking openly at the scene. Madeleine, as before the autograph, but even more faltering, pronounced anew, and slowing her moldering. Yes, Harry repeated, amused, wondering which kind of request was going to follow the autograph. Shake hands? Take a picture together? I just wanted to tell you that I'm really sorry for what happened to your daughter. I cried when I read it on the paper, she murmured, looking crestfallen. Both Harry's and Ginny's smiles vanished quickly. Harry felt the usual strangle on his heart and the usual heaviness oppressing his chest that made breathing hard. It was still difficult for him to answer to condolence, especially if, like this one, were sincerely offered. He felt Ginny's hand slipping in his own. He clenched it, and it was Ginny who replied, saving him the pain of speaking. Thank you, Madeleine. She nodded, biting her lips. At that point, they heard Margaret's voice approaching them. Madeleine, are you done? Chop chop, we need to go. No time to lose. And that was the end of the chapter. Super, 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 super long. And as yesterday, I've got a super hoarse voice. And I stumbled on words by the end. But it's fine. Next time, I will do shorter chapters. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And the next time, I don't know if I'm going to read 2 or 3. I need to count the pages. But we are going to witness to the shooting they're going to have, which is going to be quite nice. And then after that, we will read the chapter that is about another flaw of Harry, and the flaw is jealousy. So we are going to read about an argument they are going to have, and I love arguments. I mean, I love to write them. I love to read them aloud. I just love them. I think they're really, really funny. I mean, even obviously it's an argument, but they are really funny to do. They're really fun to interpret. So yeah, we will read about that too. So yeah, I guess that's all for tonight. And I thank you to have been here like usual. You are all lovely. And I hope to see you next week. And yeah, that was all. My chapter will be posted briefly. And yeah, I guess after 1 hour and 2 minutes, I can wish you good night. You must be very tired. Good job. Oh, thank you, Irene. No, not very tired. Just my voice. Just my voice and my concentration. But yeah, I'm not tired. It's fine. And I love to read aloud anyway, so I do it with pleasure. And I love to share this story with you. So, yeah, good night, my dear. Good night. See you next week.